She had been to this cemetery before, seen the sad and scared faces, but this time was to be very different. Hi, my name is Shar, and this is the And Other Stories podcast, where I tell stories of the supernatural and criminal, both real and fictional. The cemetery. Autumn had come on very suddenly this year. She had not noticed the brown leaves until she stepped onto the grass. The crunch of those steps is always one of her favourite sounds, satisfying in a melancholy way. The end of summer, the end of the life of leaves. The gate creaks as she pushes it and steps into the cemetery. It is quiet today. During the summer months, there had been a few visitors here and there. People would leave flowers on their loved ones' graves when the sun shone and the air felt lighter. But as the weather turned and the wind became icy, those people retreated into their houses to barricade themselves in their homes, protected by the heat and light against the harsh conditions outside. The first part of the cemetery is very old. She does not know how old it is, but the headstones are dark and crumbling. Nature has reclaimed most of the area, and the moss grows up the cold stone, obscuring names and dates, erasing their history. She does not see many of them here now, the ones she has come to visit. Time has faded them. Forgotten by the living, they had started to drift in the wind until they disappeared. There is the odd flicker of a shadow, the rustle of movement in the long grass, the feeling of sadness, but that is all. The emptiness is calming, but the absence of those who were here before is like an ache for something important you've lost, but can't quite remember. She carries on walking, the weak autumn sun trying in vain to warm the little bit of skin that is exposed between her scarf and hat. As she walks, the trees overhead shed even more leaves, drifting down through the still air to cover more of the ground beneath her, quieting her footsteps. The headstones start to become more intact and clear, and so do they. They start to step out from behind their graves, sensing her coming. She has been here so often, she recognises most of them now. She smiles kindly at each of them. They do not. Their faces stay the same as always, sad and longing. It had been this way since she started coming to the cemetery with her mother. She had been deemed old enough on her 8th birthday, when her mother had let her in on the secret of generations of her family. "It's a surprise," she had said, as she bundled her daughter up in several layers against the cold autumn frost outside. It was exciting at first. Out on an adventure to a mysterious place to find out something she must never tell anyone. She remembered skipping along the road, scuffing up the leaves, taking off her gloves and running her fingertips along the frosty walls until they felt numb. She walked hand in hand with her mother down the same path that she follows now, until she found them. They stood still in the middle of the cemetery, her mother putting her finger to her lips, indicating they should be quiet, and she had held her breath in anticipation. When they started to appear, she had been scared, had hidden behind her mother crying until her mother walked her forward and showed her that they were not to be feared. They were sad and alone. They needed her help. They were the only ones who could talk to them, be with them, comfort them. After that, she had come every week without fail. As she walks on, more and more of them appear, and she starts to speak out loud. She reads each headstone as she passes, and the one to whom the name belongs steps forward, like an eternal and terrible roll call. She almost knows every name and date by heart. Their faces are familiar to her. Their clothing toward the middle of the cemetery is old and dated, slightly faded and blurred. A woman tiptoes forward through the crowd, her white gown drifting over the dried leaves, until she reaches a figure standing closer. His posture is rigidly upright in his tattered and faded uniform. He glances at her as she stares up at him longingly. An old man and old woman stand next to each other, their black attire edged with stiff white collars and cuffs. Children in bare feet hide behind long skirts of young girls. A tall man at the back with a hat and elaborate cane stands staring, his chin aloft. She smiles and says hello to each of them, moving close to each one to make them feel less alone, less forgotten. She can see the longing on their faces. A few even raise their hands as if to touch her, but they can't. Their hands stop short of her by some invisible force, and they lower their arms slowly, staring at her, their expressions sad, their bodies slumped and tired. The headstones become cleaner and brighter the further in she walks. Hundreds now seem to flock near her. Stoic old men at a distance, weeping young women rushing forward, even small children peeking around the stones at her with huge eyes gleaming. The old stone makes way for shiny marble, the dates becoming more and more recent, as she continues to read every name and acknowledge each sad face. One even tries to talk, though nothing but a light breeze disturbs the silence, and they turn away defeated. She has reached the far end of the cemetery now. The shiny new headstones with clear black engravings are covered with flowers and trinkets. These are the new ones, the ones who have not been forgotten yet, whose loved ones still freshly mourn. These are the ones she still has yet to memorize, the ones who do not know yet that she can see them, that she is there for them, that she can do nothing for them except make them feel a tiny bit less alone. At the end of the row, there is disturbed earth. A brand new headstone stands beside it, covered in flowers, photos, and teddy bears. It is the newest one, and she reads the dates between born and death. Just 2 years. Taking a deep breath, she reads the name aloud and in full, trying to force down the choking in her throat. At the sound of his name, a small face appears from behind the shining marble, his fingers in his mouth, and a blanket dragging behind him. His bottom lip starts to wobble, and he starts toward her, his chubby fists raising up in front of him and grasping in and out. He runs at her full pelt until he suddenly stops just 2 feet from her as if he were physically pushed away from her, and lands seated on the grass, his dimpled knees poking out from his little shorts. She kneels down in front of him and tries to soothe him, telling him it's okay, she is here. His chest heaves in and out with stifled sobs as he clambers unsteadily to his feet. A tear runs down her cheek as she walks sadly back to his grave and crouches in front of his name. His large round eyes fixed on her, one word mouthed, but making hardly a sound.
Mama.
Thank you for listening. I hope you liked it. My name is Shar, and this is the And Other Stories podcast. See you next time.